The medieval forest was more than a stretch of trees. It was a living, breathing force that shaped the destiny of every soul who dared to step beneath its canopy. For the rich, it was a place of privilege, where power echoed in the calls of hounds and the flutter of falcon wings. But for the common man, the forest was a test of endurance, hunger, and hope. There were no shops, no packaged meat, no steady supply of bread or cheese. The kitchen was whatever the earth could offer and whatever your hands could take. Each morning began with uncertainty. Would today bring the sound of a bird caught in a snare? Would a deer leave tracks in the mud? Or would you return home with nothing but the sting of cold wind and an empty stomach? The air was damp and heavy with the scent of moss, pine, and distant smoke. Every rustling leaf stirred the imagination. Was it a rabbit, a fox, or another desperate soul searching for food? The forest was alive, but it was not generous. It gave only to those who knew how to take. In this world, hunting wasn't recreation. It was resistance against starvation. And those who entered the woods did so with reverence, with fear, and with the quiet courage of people who had no other choice. Not everyone in the Middle Ages was allowed to hunt. In fact, most people were forbidden from it. The land, the forests, and the animals belonged to kings, lords, and powerful landowners. Forest law was strict and merciless. A deer in the woods wasn't just wild, it was royal property. Killing one without permission was theft, and the penalty was often brutal: mutilation, imprisonment, or death. Peasants living in small villages, surrounded by game-rich forests, had to watch as nobles rode past with horses and hounds, while their own children cried from hunger. It created a world divided not only by class, but by survival. The forest was everywhere, yet out of reach. Still, hunger was a force stronger than law. Some peasants took the risk. Quietly, they slipped into forbidden woods at dawn or under the veil of night, setting snares for rabbits or tracking pheasants. Their lives were a constant balance between need and danger, and many believed that feeding their family was worth any punishment. In this unequal world, poaching was more than a crime. It was a form of resistance, a desperate act of defiance driven by necessity. Without access to expensive weapons, horses, or packs of dogs, the average villager relied on cunning and patience. Traps and snares, simple yet deadly, became their tools of survival. Twisted cords made from animal gut or hemp could snatch a rabbit mid-hop. A heavy rock, balanced just right, could crush a curious squirrel. A pit covered in leaves could swallow a deer if placed well. There was no room for mistakes. A trap set in the wrong place would sit untouched for days. And checking traps meant sneaking into dangerous territory, where both wild animals and patrols could end your life. Still, these methods gave the poor a fighting chance. Children were often taught to set traps from a young age. It wasn't play, it was preparation. Every family had its secrets: where to find the best game trails, how to hide a snare beneath fallen leaves, or how to spot a fox's den from broken bramble. These skills weren't written in books. They were passed down through whispers and repetition, generation after generation. The hunter didn't always carry a bow. Sometimes he simply knew where to wait and how to listen. For those who had the means, hunting was a different experience entirely. Nobles carried longbows made of yew, tall, powerful, and capable of bringing down a stag from over 100 yards. Others wielded crossbows, easier to master, but deadly in skilled hands. Spears were common for close encounters, often used in groups to corner boars or drive animals toward traps. But perhaps the most majestic tool of the noble class was the hunting bird. Falcons and hawks, trained from youth, soared into the sky at their master's signal, diving toward prey with lethal precision. Falconry was a symbol of elite culture, a sport wrapped in ritual and pride. Every weapon had a purpose and a price. Peasants caught with such gear could be punished just for possession. The tools of the hunt were also symbols of division. One man's livelihood was another man's luxury. Still, when war loomed or famine struck, even nobles hunted in earnest. The hunt was not always pageantry. It was a rehearsal for survival. And in those rare moments, bows, birds, and blades served the same purpose they did for the poorest farmer: to feed a household in need. In the medieval world, a good hunting dog was worth its weight in gold. Not just a companion, but a partner, protector, and tracker. Each breed had a role: greyhounds for speed, bloodhounds for scent, mastiffs for strength. Nobles kept kennels the size of small villages, with servants assigned solely to feeding, grooming, and training the dogs. These animals were carefully bred and deeply valued. Some even had names carved into silver collars. Noble hunting parties often featured dozens of dogs, each unleashed at the right moment to flush out birds, corner deer, or pursue wild boars into the brush. But the role of dogs wasn't limited to the castles. In small villages, a single loyal mutt could mean survival. These dogs might not be purebred or pampered, but they knew the land. They sniffed out rabbits, barked at foxes, and stood guard when their masters trespassed in forbidden woods. In return, they were fed scraps, slept by the fire, and earned a place in the family. The bond between hunter and dog ran deep, across class, across language, across every border of the medieval world. When the hunt began, man and beast became one force, hungry, silent, determined. For many, the only time to hunt was when the world slept. Under cover of night, with the moon as their lantern, poachers moved like ghosts through the trees. They wore dark cloaks, muffled their boots, and tied cloth around arrows to silence the flight. No hounds barked, no horns were blown, just soft breathing and the crunch of leaves. The risks were enormous. Royal patrols stalked the woods, trained to spot movement, to listen for broken branches. Punishments were severe: branding, blinding, even execution. But for a starving family, the fear of death was easier to bear than the cry of a hungry child. Poachers formed secret networks. They passed signals through whispers, used hidden paths through thickets, and learned the patterns of patrols. Some were caught, many weren't, and their hunted rabbits, pheasants, or even deer fed more than just their bellies. They fed the defiance of people who refused to be forgotten. In the dark forest, far from the Lord's manor, poaching became a symbol not of crime, but of courage. These weren't criminals, they were survivors. Not all hunts ended in victory. Some ended in blood. The wild boar, fast, muscular, and ferocious, was one of the most feared creatures in the forest. Armed with razor-sharp tusks and a body built for ramming, it could kill a man in seconds. Boar hunts were not for the faint of heart. They required coordination, courage, and a willingness to bleed. Hunters would use dogs to harass and weaken the boar, drawing it into the open. Then men with spears stepped forward, surrounding the beast in a deadly circle. One wrong move, and the boar would charge. Many did not come home. Bears were even worse, heavy, intelligent, protective of their cubs. To face a bear was to accept that death might be the outcome. But in hard winters, when food was scarce and people desperate, these animals offered fat meat, fur, life itself. In noble circles, slaying a boar was a rite of passage. In villages, it was a miracle. In both, it was remembered for years, told by the fire, etched into memory, whispered to wide-eyed children who would one day face the same fear. History rarely mentions them, but women hunted too. In noble families, ladies rode beside their lords, hawks on their wrists, bows in their hands. Hunting was seen as noble education, a way to teach grace, courage, and skill. Some noble women were renowned for their aim and daring, but more often it was the village women who hunted in silence. With baskets and knives, they roamed the edge of forests, gathering mushrooms, herbs, and occasionally trapping small animals. They used slings, set snares, and knew where birds nested or foxes passed. They taught their daughters which plants to eat, which berries were poisonous, and how to gut a rabbit in the dark. They passed down the knowledge not found in books: how to survive, how to feed, how to hide from the law. These women weren't warriors or legends, but they kept their families alive. And in a world that didn't honor their work, they became the quiet heart of the hunt, unseen but essential. The moment of the kill was just the beginning. Once the animal fell, time became the enemy. Meat had to be cleaned, butchered, and preserved before rot set in. Salt was precious and often traded like gold. Smoked meats hung from rafters, drying slowly above hearths. Hides were scraped and stretched, transformed into leather for boots, belts, or cloaks. Every part of the animal was used. Bones became needles or tools. Intestines were cleaned and stuffed for sausages. Hooves turned to glue. Even the blood found its way into stews or bread. In villages, the kill was often shared. A large animal brought people together. Children ran messages, elders prepared fires, and neighbors lent knives. In these moments, the hunt became more than a solitary act. It was a community ritual, a reminder that survival was shared. The forest gave sparingly, and what it gave had to be respected. Waste was not just foolish, it was dangerous. Winter waited cold and silent, and every preserved slice of meat was another day of life. Today, the medieval hunt might seem distant, a tale from another age filled with armor, dogs, and myth. But its echoes remain in traditions, in language, in the human instinct to provide and endure. Back then, hunting wasn't about trophies. It wasn't a weekend escape. It was raw, gritty, and unforgiving. A daily test of wits, endurance, and luck. Whether noble or peasant, man or woman, every hunter faced the same question. Would they return with meat or with nothing? The forest watched them all. It held secrets, dangers, and salvation in equal measure. And though centuries have passed, we can still feel that ancient pull, the heartbeat of a people who learned to read the trees, move with the wind, and live by the rhythm of nature. In remembering them, we remember what it meant to fight for every meal, to risk for every bite, and to thank the land for what little it gave.